Welcome to the Bill Cartwright Show with our special guest, Rutgers finest, Rutgers Hall of Famer, ex-New York Knick, Hollis Copeland. Hollis, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bill. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. What I'd like to do is to have us get to know you very quickly. So let's start with this.
Okay.
Talk about where you're from and talk about your mom and dad.
Okay, I'm originally from Trenton, New Jersey. My mother is from Columbia, South Carolina. It's funny because people say, "Where did you get your athleticism from?" So my grandfather, who was her father, Gonzo Donaldson, he played in the Negro League, right? Back in the day. But he was more of a utility type of guy. Because, he was hustling and working. And when they came to anywhere close to Columbia, South Carolina back in the day, they would have him play. And my grandmother would say, I said, well, grandmother, what position did he play? She says, well, they used to call him Monkey Wrench. And I said, why did they call him that? She said, well, any way they put him, he fit. So he pitched, he caught, he played all positions. My father's from Parrott, Georgia. He's military, he was in the Army, Korean War, Purple Heart. So they met in Trenton, New Jersey with some of their brothers and sisters who had moved up from the South. So my beginnings start in Trenton. We moved to Ewing, New Jersey, which is just on the outskirts of Trenton, and there where I launched my little basketball career with Ewing High, having an opportunity to play, as we spoke earlier, down in Philadelphia in the Sunny Hill League. And Sonny, it's funny because Sonny took me under his wing and exposed me to a lot of other ball players, exposed me to the Philly area. He knew I was the only player that played on the team that I played for from Trenton. Everybody else was from Philly. And so it was, he helped me acclimate to that environment at the time.
Now, was he kind of when you were in high school, was he your mentor? I mean, were you naturally athletic?
Yeah, funny you mentioned that, Bill. I was naturally athletic. I was actually my first real sport once I started engaging in organized sports was track. So I used to high jump, triple jump, long jump, 100, 220. Back then it was the 100, 220, 440,
Yeah.
So I'm dating myself, of course, but so I was in track. And my junior year in track, actually, I won the state high jump championship under different circumstance because it was hot that day, and the guys who was jumping much higher than me during the year, they couldn't jump in heat, and I could. And that was the meet of champions in New Jersey.
So what was your height? How high did you get?
I got up to 6'9".
Wow, I did not know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, 6'9". And it was the meet of champions where I jumped that. That was my best. That was my personal best. And I hadn't jumped more than 6'7" prior to that. It was just one of those days where, you were in that zone, and they had it at Rutgers University. And the coach who was recruiting me at the time was Tom Young, and he came to watch me jump. And I thought that was pretty impressive that although it was at Rutgers, he was there to support me. And, needless to say, that was a thumbs up for Rutgers, which I was being recruited at the time for both basketball and track. I had over 200 scholarship offers.
Wow. Now you had over 200 scholarships for track or basketball?
No, for track and basketball combined.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I had some for track. I had some more of them was for basketball than for track. But a number of schools wanted me to run track, like William and Marshall. A number of schools wanted me to run track, and there were a few schools that it's crazy that I could have done both. So my first year at Rutgers, where I attended, my first year there, I was on the track team as well as the basketball team, but my scholarship was for basketball.
Wow. So as you're leaving high school, let's talk about this. How did you end up at Rutgers, and what were your final maybe two choices of places to go?
It's funny, I was considering UCLA because at the time they were going to let me play both sports. Rutgers, the reason why I went to Rutgers is, once again, I was impressed by Coach Young and Phil Sellers at the time. I had seen him play, and I was very impressed. He played down in Trenton at Cal Warriors Park, which is in Trenton, New Jersey. And I watched him play. I was thoroughly impressed with the way he played, and he was the star of the team. So while I was in high school, I had a chance to see him play his freshman and sophomore year. And then I guess the final stroke was my girlfriend at the time. She had a full boat in state, of course, academic scholarship to go to Rutgers. So that kind of like sealed the deal.
I see.
Yeah.
So talk about your team at the time, and talk about your head coach.
At Rutgers?
Yes.
Yes. So Coach Young, Coach Tom Young, who's now deceased, he passed away last year. So Dick Vitale was the recruiter who recruited Mike Dabney and Phil Sellers, who are all Americans. Phil out of Brooklyn, New York, and Mike Dabney out of East Orange, New Jersey. Dick Vitale had the gift of gab, and he supposedly was tabbed to be the head coach. But the one thing that Dick has, and he might have been a little bit ahead of his time, he had the gift of gab, and he was a little bit more gregarious, if I may use that term. And I think that Rutgers at the time, the athletic director, Fred Gruninger, thought that he might have been a little bit too much for Rutgers. And they went looking outside of the coaching staff that was there at the time. And that's where they found Tom Young, who was at American U. Actually, Tom Young coached Kermit Washington at American U. And I think that that's where he made his name. So they tabbed him, and of course, Coach Young brought in his own coaching staff. And that's kind of like where that started. The impression that Phil made on me and Mike Dabney made on me encouraged me to come to Rutgers. And I wanted to stay close to home as well so that my folks can see me perform in college. Not that I wanted to stay in New Jersey, but stay close enough to home. Also, there was one other situation I had. Princeton was they were recruiting me very, very highly at the time. And Pete Carell was the coach. Pete Carell was an all-state basketball player in Pennsylvania. And he also played against my high school coach. So they had an alliance. They had a great relationship. And I could have gone to Princeton. The only thing that held me back from going to Princeton is that my freshman year, we had to play freshman ball. Ivy League, you had to play freshman ball your freshman year. And I had to PG a year, so I had to go to Lawrenceville Prep for 1 year. So I'm looking at that and I'm saying, I'm foregoing 2 years of my college career right away to play basketball, and I can go to Rutgers and possibly start my freshman year. So that was a decision I made at the time, and it just worked out. It really did work out.
When you did,
Although Pete Carell, before he passed, Pete Carell said that I made the wrong decision. Should have gone to Princeton.
of course you did. You guys had some good years at Rutgers. Talk about your best year.
Well, at Rutgers, the team's best year, and I had one of my best years my sophomore year, although I scored better in my junior and senior year. But I remember winning the MVP in the ECAC tournament my sophomore year, which they had at Madison Square Garden. And we played St. John's, and the first half of the game, I've kind of I scored a lot of points, played very, very well. And the voting usually takes place, although you play halves, like the tail end of the third quarter. So the votes were in, and they had voted me the MVP. Now, I will say this, towards the end of the game, we started going to Phil Sellers, and Phil went ballistic towards the end of the game, but the votes were already in. And so I felt good about that. We also, that team went to the Final Four undefeated. And once we got to the Final Four, this was in 76. 76 was the bicentennial. So once again, I'm in Philly playing again, it's like a home court for me. Because I'm from Trenton, New Jersey, and my family could come see me play. Relatives could come see me play. We played in the Spectrum. It just so happened we ran into a guy by the name of Ricky Green, who was a very, very quick point guard. And one of the things we did as a team, we played very good defense, and we trapped well. But when you have a guard that can handle the ball well and fast, he can break that press. And once you break the press, you get past that first line. The second line is on defense, and it's easier for them to score, because now you're more like a 3-on-2, or and so we found ourselves down by like 10, 12 points in no time. And it's hard to make that up whenever you play against a team, a Big Ten team like a Michigan. So we found out very quickly that we were kind of like out of our element by pressing them. By the time we got to a point where we had some reasonable, we had a reasonable offense going, it was too late. We ended up losing the game by like 13, 15 points. And you're playing desperation basketball, so
right.
It was kind of tough. But by the same token, I really, that was a great season. We had a very good season. Then back then you played the consolation game, and we ended up playing UCLA with Marcus Johnson and Andre McCarter, who's from Philly, and Richard Washington, who was an LA guy. We were just outmanned at that particular point in time. But with that being said, we had a great season.
Yeah.
And I thought I had a great season.
You guys made it to the Final Four. That right there is amazing. So as you exit your senior year, what are you thinking? Do you feel like you're ready for the NBA? Were you prepared?
You know what, Bill? The year that we went to the Final Four undefeated, and we end up losing the last two games, they send your team abroad. We went to Italy, so we were in Rome, Florence, Milan, but we were there for 2 weeks. By the time we got back, there were no jobs. All the alumni, they took care of the people that they had to take care of and what have you. And so I remember going to Trenton State College, which is a college in New Jersey now, and working out, trying to get myself reasonable shape. And there was a guy there in the court. He looked like Walt Frazier, right? And I'm shooting around after I lift, and his ball ends up on my side of or court. And it is Clyde, it's Walt Frazier, 76. And I'm like, wow. And he's like, hey man, you want to play some one-on-one? We end up playing one-on-one. And of course, I'm from Trent. This is my court. What are you doing here? Well, it just so happened he was doing a camp for 2 weeks, and I end up meeting Erwin Weiner through Walt Frazier. Walt Frazier was being actually he was offered a $1 million contract in '76 to leave the Knicks to go to the Cleveland Cavaliers. And while playing him one-on-one, and I met Erwin Weiner asked, what was I doing for the summer? And I told him, like, basically nothing. I'm gonna work out and stay in shape and be ready for the next year. He said, do you want to do some camps? I said, yeah, I love doing camps. Well, he put me in touch with 3 camps. I did Walt Frazier's camp, I did George Gervin's camp, and I did Julius Erving's camp. And in these camps, as a counselor, you end up playing against other counselors and the pro whose camp it is. So that summer, I had a chance to play against Frazier, George McGinnis, and Dr. J. And Dr. J's camp was up in Simsbury, Connecticut. It just so happened I had to play him twice a day. We had lunch, and then around dinner time, after we had ate, we played. And man, I learned a lot. I got a lot of, so yes, answer to your question, at that point in time, I felt like I can play in the NBA.
Wow, yeah. You had you had a great foundation of guys to play against. That's amazing.
Yes. And I cherish that every day, that, having that exposure prior to leaving college.
So did you have a sense that where you were going to get drafted and what team you're going to get drafted by?
Didn't have a sense of, I felt like I played well enough to get drafted. I just didn't know where. I played for some reason or another, I got invited to a few All-Star games and did well in every All-Star game I played in, because one, when I was coming up as a kid, I played guard. And so I was able to handle the ball. But once again, in high school, they play you where, you best fit for the team. And I played center. So when I went to Rutgers, they had me playing forward. Phil played small forward. I played big forward, power forward. So what my size was, Bill, at the time. How was I playing power forward in college? And that, we changed. Sometimes Phil would play power. Sometimes he'd play small. Sometimes I play small. Sometimes I play power. And jumping was a big part of my game back in the day, when my knees weren't done. So it offered me the opportunity to play several positions in college, and that really helped me gauge my talents as a pro, or trying to become a pro. Being able to handle the ball, being able to jump and play several positions, both offensively and defensively. So I had a sense that I could, especially playing in the Portsmouth tournament, because I averaged 30 points in that tournament. So I think that's where and you're playing against seniors who are of your peers, right? So and they have similar talents. So it was yeah. I felt confident enough that I could play in the NBA.
So talk about being drafted by the Knicks, and give me an idea of your first year. What were you thinking?
All right. First of all, I was drafted by the Denver Nuggets in '78. So went to camp, played very well in camp, And as it turned out, it was a numbers game. I didn't have a guaranteed contract. I was the last cut. I was cut on opening day, by the way, by the Denver Nuggets. And they kept me around for like, I don't know, 3 weeks. They paid for my board. They gave me, you know, a little stipend to kind of like live off. And one of the reasons they did that, they were saying if there was an injury, that I'll be, you know, I'll be there. But I couldn't practice with the team. I had to practice at the YMCA that was in, you know, and guys that were from that area would play also. You know, but I found it tough to stay in that, you know, to labor under those conditions. And then I ended up going to Montana, the Montana Sky team, which was, I guess, there you would consider that farm team there. But Bill, it was the first time that I felt somewhat rejected, you know, because I didn't make that team. I thought I played well enough, and I was playing against David Thompson twice a day, and David Thompson at that time was no joke. He jumps to the moon. He's quick as a cat. He'll dunk on anybody. I mean, he could stand. I've seen him do things that I couldn't believe somebody could do. Any human being can do. You know, jumping straight up off of 2 feet, no running jump, and he's touching like above the box of the backboard. I'm like, man, this is unbelievable. Anyway, but once again, I felt like I could play in the NBA. So the following year, I had a chance to try out for the Knicks as a free agent. Eddie Donovan came down to this Jersey Shore League, and I won the MVP there. And this is not bragging. I'm just saying these are stated facts. You can probably Google them. And he said, this is his exact words. He said, we're going to give you a shot. You probably won't make the team, but you'll have a chance to showcase your talents. And that's where it started. You know, it gave me an opportunity to try out for the team. And Bill, as well as you know, now I had some angst about going to the locker room and seeing if my name was there, because last time it wasn't there when I was with Denver. But what gave me confidence that I made the team, Butch Beard came out after practice and he said, actually this is before practice, and he said, you made it hard for them. That's all he said. You made it hard for them. And as it turned out, I did make the team. My name was just under your name, actually, Cartwright Copeland. And I was so elated. I called my parents and they were jumping up and down. I hear my mother screaming in the background, yeah, June made the team. I'm a junior. But what I did not know, and it later revealed itself because of what they called us, that I was the one player that made it an all-black team, which was interesting at the time, you know? And, you know, we both went through it because we're rookies together. It was a different environment for the Knicks. You know, we had 5 rookies that year, and we didn't really go through what rookies would really need to go through, like carrying bags, because we were almost a majority, you know, on that team. Earl was the elder statesman, and Earl didn't make us do much. He made me carry his bags every once in a while, but that was it. You know, so it was an interesting time. It was an interesting team. Red had just come back to coach the team, right? Because I think Willis was the coach prior to him, and he was the coach prior to Willis. So it was different.
So talk about playing with the Knicks, and then talk about what your next step was after that.
Okay, playing with the Knicks was interesting. Like I said, we had 5 rookies. You know, we had, of course, Michael Ray Richardson, Ray Williams.
Yeah.
They were point guards. Yeah. And to tell you the truth, it was Michael Ray and Sugar and Ray that helped me make that team, because we played against the Nets at Monmouth College. That was our last exhibition game. And Glenn Gondrzak, John Rudd, of course, Toby Knight was the starting forward, and Sly Williams. So I was the 5th forward on that team. And the one thing that helped me immensely at that point in time was nobody could stop Otis Birdsong. Toby couldn't stop him. Toby couldn't stop him. And Glenn or John couldn't stop him. And Sly was sick. So Sly was sick, and he didn't even play that time. So they were forced to play me. And with Ray and Sugar running and, running the point, and, we were playing that transition game, I just didn't let Otis get the ball. I just tried not to let him get the ball, because he was such a great offensive threat. If you don't let him get the ball, he gets frustrated and he started doing things that are uncomfortable for him. So I wanted to make him feel uncomfortable. And the other thing that made him feel uncomfortable, now he had to run the floor, because, like I said, I was good. I was a track guy, so I used to run the floor. And Ray and Sugar used to throw the alley-oops and layups, and we cutting, and before you knew it, we come back on them. Otis is tired now, and we end up winning our last exhibition game. And I played very well that day because of Sly not being there, and nobody could stop Otis Birdsong. And I think that was the determining factor for me making that team. And of course, Ray and Sugar continued to play the way they played. You played the way you played, and Larry played the way he played. And so and Toby played the way he played. So I thought that the chemistry started coming together midway through the season. And if you remember that year, we missed the playoff by half a game. And we should have gotten in, and Washington should have been out. They eased them because I think we lost to 76ers by a couple of points. And we had the game, and I want to say that we lost by 1, but it was an Aaron alley-oop pass between Sugar and Ray, and I think Doc intercepted it, and they ended up winning that game, and we ended up missing the playoffs by half a game. That's my recollection.
Yeah, I do remember that we did just miss the playoffs. And I remember that Jersey, if they could have won their last game, we were in. And
Exactly. And they lost.
So probably intentionally, but that was it was a great learning experience. So talk about your next step after that. After your time in New York, what was your next step? I know what it is because I wrote it down. So what's your
well, my next step was, I was in New York. The following year, I was released, and I went to play in Zaragoza, Spain.
I'll say that again because I couldn't pronounce it. Say that again.
It's Z, but the way they pronounce it is Zaragoza. That's the way they pronounce it, Zaragoza. And that's between Madrid and Barcelona. So the C's are like a th, the enunciations are amazing because it's Castilian Spanish.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's
So,
Castilian Spanish. And
so, so talk about your time there.
oh man, I loved it. Bill, I loved it.
Oh,
Actually, I met my wife that summer. Um, so the summer, my rookie year, that summer in August, I met Deline, my wife. Um, and she came over to Spain to enjoy some time with me. She's supposed to come for 2 weeks. She ended up staying for like 3 4 months, and that kind of like consummated our relationship. But what was but I guess acclimating to the Spanish culture was quite eye-opening because one, I didn't speak Spanish that well, and the way they said "negra," they said it very fast, and "negra" is just black, right? But they said it very fast, and I thought they were using something that was more pro- profane than it should have been, So I had to learn the language. One, two, I had to um, really pick up the culture. So in the middle of the day, you take a siesta, which you stop work, you eat a good hearty meal, and you're drinking wine in the middle of the day. Then you come back to work after that. My frame of mind was, if you come back after doing all that, you're not as efficient. But as it turns out, you're definitely as efficient, maybe even more efficient because you're more relaxed. And it's towards the end of the day, and it's people got more work done during that time. And we would practice 2 hours prior to siesta and then 2 hours after siesta. And I will tell you this, the practices after siesta was much more engaging,
wow, interesting.
much more engaging. Um, Back then, the peseta was, I mean, you felt like you were rich. I think it was 1,000 pesetas to $1. You would go and I would go and get a glass of wine from some places for like, I don't know, 75 cents. Um, you can go get lamb chops and you can go, there are times when we go to certain places and they wouldn't even take our money. No dinero, no, 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 libra, and that's free. And you felt like a rock star. Um, and it just so happened in Zaragoza, I was the first black player to play for a team there. Now, the team I played for had just gotten moved up to first division from second division. So back then, the last two teams in first division gets bumped down to second division, and the first two teams in second division uh, gets bumped up to first division. So that was one of the things that we did. The team had just got to first division. They were at the time they were getting ready to get bumped down because they were in next to last place once I got there. And I started taking Spanish lessons from Professor Vacada. And when Deline came over, she was taking Spanish lessons also. So we would practice on each other. And we learned it fairly well. Well enough so I could communicate with my teammates, well enough so I could communicate, tell people what I wanted as far as eating and purchasing things. After games, didn't feel uncomfortable talking in Spanish. So it was a great experience. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you knew this, I did not want to come back and play with the Knicks. They were going to sign me to a 2-3 year contract to stay there, was going to pay the Knicks my signing bonus and interest. And the Knicks shot it down. Bill, you over there, you're eating what you want to eat. They give you a car, they give you a villa, you're getting paid cash. And, you win some big games, coach is buying you a suit, they're buying you things. They're putting roses in front of your door, on your, people knew you. You were like the man, you know, you the Michael Jordan of that city. I wasn't used to that, but you can easily get used to it. So yeah, great experience. Then come back, play with the Knicks, make the team, and end up dislocating 5 bones in my left foot in practice, and that was an optional practice, no less, in January. And that pretty much was the end of my NBA career from that point on. So I had to transition, and I did transition and transition into business, becoming a stockbroker, a retail stockbroker, and then transitioning from retail to the wholesale, the institutional side, which is where I am now, semi-retired, but that's where I'm at now.
Talk about that, because that's not normal. That's like, how does that happen? And who influenced you to get into that business? Because that's a pretty tough world.
Yeah, I will say that it was divine intervention. That's the only way I can put it. Just like I thought it was divine intervention how I made the Knicks, you know, Sly being sick and how things went with Otis. That was divine intervention. That's the way I receive it. I was working at a bank at the time, Irving Trust, and Irving Trust had a bankers league. They played in the bankers league. Back then, there were, Bank of New York, a number of different banks. We played in a league, and me being who I was at the time, although I couldn't play pro ball the way I wanted to, you know, playing recreational ball, it was easy. We just happened to be in the gym where Bear Stearns was practicing also. The team that was supposed to practice with Bear Stearns didn't show up. So they asked us to scrimmage with them, and we scrimmaged. And it seemed like the worst player on the floor was this guy. And he looked like he was going to hurt somebody because he was very aggressive, but he couldn't shoot. He was just one of those guys that seemed like he shouldn't have been on the court, but he was on the court. And there were a number of guys that were on the Bear Stearns team who I had played against in the Pro-Am League. And one of the guys came over to me and he said, you know, somebody wants to meet you once we had a break. And he said, I'm going to bring him over. It's my boss. What happened to be that same guy that looked like he shouldn't have been on the floor? And I'm like, and Alex tells me that this guy makes $5 million a year. He's our managing director, retail managing director. Cope, he said that he saw you play for the Knicks, and he really liked you. He liked the way you play. You run the floor the whole bit. He was a fan of yours. So I think you should meet him. I said, no problem. I'll meet him. And we started talking. And the guy asked me one simple question that rung my bell. He said, let me ask you a question. What do you do now? I said, I work for Irving Trust. He said, what do you do there? I said, I'm a sales rep. He said, so what do you sell? I said, tell you the truth, I sell myself. He said, good answer. That's the answer I'm looking for, selling yourself. He said, show up in my office tomorrow at 7:30. If you're late, don't come. I've never had anybody pose that to me. This guy I just met. You tell me if I'm late, don't come? Okay. Told my wife, told Delene about it. We were married at the time. And she said, well, you're not going to be late. You're going to be there. You're going to be there half an hour ahead of time. And pretty much that's it, Bill. Came, he interviewed me. We got into a heated interview, and he introduced me to the rest of the managing directors, and that's where it all started.
What do you mean a heated interview?
Well, Alex Middleton, who was the guy that I had played Pro-Am ball with, he gave me a heads up. He says, Steve's going to interview you. He's going to put his feet on the desk. He's going to act like he's not interested. He's going to ask you silly questions and all that. But you got to get him to sit up. You got to get him to sit up, take his feet off the desk. Once he does that, then you got him. So he asked me the question, why should I hire you? I mean, you're a ball player, so why should I hire you? I said, I'm disciplined. I'm coachable. If somebody teach me how to do something, I can do it. And I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And I'm going to try to outshine anybody else that's in that position. And he says, I got some $1 million producers here, and now he's kind of like taking his feet off the desk, he's raising his voice a little bit. He said, I got some $1 million, $2 million, $3 million producers here, $5 million producers here. And you're telling me that you're going to be able to compete with them? I said, Steve, if I ever get the opportunity to learn this business, they'll be competing with me. And then he stands up. He stands up. And I'm sitting down, and he's talking down on me, and he's cursing, and he's telling me, you're a cocky MF, and you're this and that. I don't hire people like that. I said, well, that's your loss. You don't hire people like that. If I can keep him standing up, I know that Alex said, you got it, right? But he don't know that Alex told me this. And he's talking and he's spitting and he's blah, blah, blah. Now I stand up. And even though I'm way above him, he's a short guy. And I'm telling him, Steve, if you were the one to teach me, or if you got some of these real guys to teach me, I'll be the best broker you ever had here. I know that. You don't know it, but I don't know. Give me the opportunity. And he's yelling, you got a lot of nerve. This is my play, blah, blah, blah. So much so, Bill, that there's a knock at the door, and it's his assistant, and she's asking, is everything all right? Because we're yelling at each other. That's what I meant by a heated conversation. And he, in turn, he had me meet all the managing directors on the floor. He hired me. That was in 87 when I had the interview. He couldn't hire me until 88, January of 88. And that's where I started my career in this business.
Wow. So that's what he was looking for. He was looking
That's
for
what he was looking for. That's what Steve answered. That's what he was looking for. And he did teach me the business. I ended up leaving Bear, going to another firm, and that's where I cut my bones on the institutional side. You're talking to institutions. So on the retail side, you can only talk to individuals, high net worth individuals. On the institutional side, you don't talk to individuals, you talk to institutions, asset managers, banks, insurance companies. You're talking to pension funds, you're talking to hedge funds, you're talking to family offices, anybody that manages over $100 million.
Wow.
Yeah. And the difference is they have to be in the market. They have to put money to work. On the retail side, they don't have to. That's of their own volition. And they may have several brokers, and you may not be one of them. On the institutional side, they have several brokers. They have several brokers, and you're in competition with them. I've always, most of the time that I've been on this side of the business, I've been on this side of the business on the minority side, MWBE side, minority women business enterprise. So that's where the majority of my years I've been on in that fold, where they have to do 25 to 30% of their business with a minority or a woman or a veteran. They may not have to do it with you, but in New York and Illinois, there is a mandate that they have to do that a certain piece of business with minorities.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So talk about what you're doing now. Are you still working? Are you gonna?
Yeah, I'm still. So I work for Tigris Financial, it's a woman-owned disabled firm, disabled from the standpoint that there are a number of employees that are on the spectrum. Brilliant, smart people, but you got to keep them right here. You know, you got to keep them in a certain finite space. And once they get out of that space, it can get a little hairy. But I like it. My background is psychology, so it gives me an opportunity to use what I've been trained to do from college. I like the business, although the business has been a little bit more difficult because the margins have changed. So I got to figure this out. I've been with this firm for 3 years. So, and they allow me to work remotely, which is great. So yes, I'm working, but I'm more or less semi-retired.
So that's interesting too, because most people our age want to retire. I'm not one of them. So
yeah, no, I get what you're talking about. And Bill, that may be because we're of a different ilk, because we did play, you play a whole lot longer than me, but we did play pro ball. We're athletes. We're still active. And I truly believe if you keep your body active, your mind stays active. And so if you like what you do, if it's a passion of yours, it's not work. It's just an activity, right? And that's what I treat this as. I like people. I like talking to people. I like engaging with them. And, and I like to see them happy. I like to be a value add to what they do. And if I can get them to make investments, or if I can execute for them and it's good, then why not do it for the rest of your life? Do it as long as you can do it. If you really like it. But if it changes the way you look at yourself, if it changes the way people look at you in a negative vein, then it's not for you. Then you got to leave, because life is too short to be doing something you don't want to do.
I still watch. Well, I'm a big sports guy anyway. Baseball, basketball, football, golf, everything, any sport on TV I'll watch.
Right.
Do you still watch the NBA? And
like you, I watch all sports. I love golf. I watch golf. I play golf. One of the few sports I can still play anyway. I love basketball. I love baseball. I'm a Yankees fan. I love football. I like Kansas City. I like the Giants. I'm a sports fan. I like college basketball. I like women's basketball. I'm there. I'm all in. If there's a sporting event on TV, I'm watching it.
Talk about the current NBA. Do you like that style of play?
Yes and no. People say that the three-point shot has changed basketball. Well, basketball has evolved. Basketball will continue to evolve, right? Yeah, it has changed. Some people say it's for the worse. I don't think that. I like to see a team always be in the game. And if that's what it takes for you to still be in the game, then so be it. I think that they've softened the game up a little bit. You can't hit players the way you used to be able to bump players. Guys don't play defense the way they should be playing defense. Big men don't play the game the way they, if you're a big man, that I watched a guy the other day. I forget what his name was, but he threw a nice hook shot. And one of the commentators said, "Wow, that's a rarity." You might have watched the game too. He said, "That's a rarity." Yes. And then they kept throwing it like it was a perfect hook. Like Jabbar, they brought Jabbar. They said, "Look at this. Jabbar would love this." They said, Jabbar would love this. And, you know, and I thought about it. I'm saying that shot is the perfect shot for a big man, but nobody uses it.
Nobody.
Nobody even goes down low much anymore.
Nobody.
So it's a different game. It's a different game. And, you know, George Gervin, somebody told me that George Gervin just made a comment about somebody broke his, I don't know, the 3-point, I mean, some scoring record that he did, something that he had done. And he said, I still got the record because when I was playing like that, they didn't have a 3-point shot. And I was shooting for 3-point range a lot of the time, but it only counted as 2. So the game has evolved, and people forget about, they always talk about who's the greatest player that ever played. And people forget about playing like Wilt Chamberlain. They forget about him. And, you know, and Wilt probably was the best player that ever played the game. You know, they said, well, he was bigger than, well, is that his fault?
Well, he was definitely.
Is that his fault?
Hey, let's talk about your family.
All right, yes. And yes, I'm gonna have to go in a little while. I know I'm supposed to have a workout at 2, but my family, so I married the young lady named Deline. Her name was Woolfolk at the time, Copeland. We've been married 40 years. And Bill, you were the first one. You were the guy in my room. You were my roommate, and you told me I was gonna marry her. You told me I was gonna marry her. You know, and I was like laughing about it. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, because both of you were on the phone, you're falling asleep on the phone. Yeah, you're going to marry. I know. And I was like, I laughed about it. And then 2 years later, I'm married. 2 years later, I'm married. And my daughter, Yasmin, she's 40. Yasmin had some issues. She had a couple of brain, actually a couple. They've been inside of her head 7 times. She had some brain tumors removed and biopsies and of the like. She had a seizure surgery last, but she's fine. She's well. She may have a small deficit from time to time, her memory, but great girl. You know, she's engaged to be married soon. And my son, so as she asked me, Copeland, my son, Julian Copeland, he's 10 years younger than her. He's 30, and he's engaged to be married. They both work. She works for Amneal Pharmaceutical, which is out of New Jersey. The office is in New Jersey and New York, but they're basically out of New Jersey, Middlesex County. And my son works for BlackRock. What he does is, Deline, get your phone. What he does is he advises insurance companies on investments, you know. So that's kind of like what, you know, where we are. And so my wife and I, we decided to sell our home. We moved up to Newark, New Jersey. People say, you moved to Newark? Yeah, we moved in the ironbound part of Newark, New Jersey, Portuguese part of New Jersey, Newark. And we like it. We like it. We're trying to decipher what we're going to do. May work another year at best, but what we're going to retire. You know, we have a lot of people down in Florida that's kind of coaxing us to move down to Florida. My mother lives in South Carolina. She's coaxing me to come to South Carolina. And so, you know, we're trying to figure it out where our money goes the furthest. But with that being said, we want the politics to be right as well, too. So that, you know, if you're going to live there for the rest of your life, you want to make sure that things are very comfortable for you. Yes. So we have to make that assessment.
Well, Hollis, thank you very much for being on the show. It's been such a long time. We got to figure, now that we know you play golf, we got to get something going.
Boy, whenever you're ready, all you got to do is just tell me, Bill. I'm there. I'm there. I'm not Tiger, but I'm all right. I love the game, man. I love the game.
Well, the only thing I'm going to tell you is that I'm going to hit the ball. I'm not sure where, but it's going somewhere.
I know just how that feels. In more ways than one.
Well, awesome, Hollis. Thank you so much. And I'm just looking forward to spending some time with you.
Oh, it'd be my pleasure, Bill. It's been too long, man. Been
Yes.
too long.